I'm going to take a little, we're going to do a pop quiz in a minute. But first, a little survey. At the start of today, you were all told, I believe, that you all are going to be communicators by the end of today, right? So raise your hand if during the break you jumped on social media and signed up for 5 new accounts. Okay? Raise your hand if next week you've got a presentation to make and you've decided that you're going to tell a story as heart-wrenching as Up at the start of the thing, right? Raise your hand if you finally understand which of those generations you belong to and all the different, because I've seen 20 presentations on that and I can still never remember which, am I an X or a boomer or am I somewhere in between? I don't know. I think I'm an aging Xer, is that right? Where's our presenter? I'm born in 1970.
Oh, yeah, or a Generation Jones, kind of between the two.
Generation Jones? I didn't know that. There's a new one. Okay, Generation Jones. Anyway, I have good news for you. Since virtually no one raised your hands, I'm going to give you an out, okay? If you watch this presentation and you listen carefully, what you're going to realize is that thanks to people like your good selves, thanks to the Southern Group of State Foresters and many people in this room, over the last few years, the sector has actually invested. I'm just seeing Wib, who sits on the board of the North American Forest Partnership and has done, has invested in actually making this much easier for you to do, okay? So raise your hand if you would like it to be easy to communicate with everybody we've talked about this morning, all right? Anyone didn't raise their hand for that one, I will talk later, okay? So I'm going to talk to you today about #ForestProud. That's a platform. It's a communications platform. How many people have seen, heard of, had something show up in their social media from Forest Proud? Okay, pretty good mix, about half, I think. Maybe a little more. And you've probably wondered you might have wondered where that comes from, how it gets produced, and what the purpose of it is. And what you're going to see, I hope, as we go through this presentation is that everything you've heard so far this morning has informed the work that gets done at Forest Proud and how we're doing what we're doing. Okay? So you are now hopefully in the perfect place to sit and listen to our presentation about how the forest sector itself is trying to do everything we've talked about. We actually brought Andy Goodman in. I've worked with Andy for nearly 20 years at this point. So I'm deeply hold on to the idea of storytelling. Really, really keen to show you how we're using storytelling to do our work. But before that, we're going to do a bit of a pop quiz. Okay? We're going to test whether you are listening to these other presentations. So I want you to tell me what this guy is doing. What's he up to? He's chilling, okay?
He's up to no good.
He's up to no good. Yeah, you always get the generational difference there. He's chilling, he's up to no good, yeah. What else? I heard somebody saying something good over here.
I was saying he's pretending to look like he's up to no good. He wants to look like.
He wants to look like he's up to no good. Okay, interesting reflection, yeah.
Wondering where his other blue sock
He's
is.
always, that always comes up. I'm red-green colorblind, so I didn't see the sock thing for ages until people started pointing it out. Yep. What else? Over here. What's he up to?
He's taking a break.
He's taking a break. Yes, maybe.
He's upset you're taking a picture.
He's upset. Someone said, I didn't take it. Someone said, but someone take a picture of him. Yeah. What's he trying to do you think, in this photograph? Say again?
Posing for Instagram.
Posing for Instagram, maybe. This was way before Instagram. I got this picture. Yeah. What's he doing? What's he trying to do with what he's wearing, how he's sitting, his attitude? What's he trying to do? He's making a statement. Okay, good. What else? Rebelling. Good one. Yep. Someone put their hand up or scratch their nose.
Maybe he's about to go into surgery and he's a surgeon.
There you go. Yeah, could be. Yeah, sometimes people say like he's wasting his time not making any money. I'm like, no, he's probably a .com millionaire for all we know. We have no idea, right? Okay, a couple more. What's he doing? When you sit there and you respond to this picture, what do you think he's trying to tell us?
Consider being an organ donor.
He's considering being an organ donor, okay? One more. What is this guy up to? He's trying to tell us something, right? Now, who's he going to be with this evening? Okay, he's going to go somewhere this evening. And one of the things I think it's safe to say is right now this guy is trying to stand out, right? He is trying to say, here I am, I'm different. Who's he going to be with this evening? He's not going to be with his parents, they've kicked him out. His crew, his friends, his tribe, right? You've heard this word this morning, this tribe. It's a word we have to use delicately, but it is the perfect word to describe the social bonds that we form and meet with people. So this evening he's going to go to the pub and he's going to be with 500 people who look like what? Exactly like him. Okay? So one of the things you've heard consistently this morning as we talk about people is they form tribes, they also form very strong identities, and when you're trying to reach them, you have to work with that. Okay? And it's going to be a clicker day. Someone needs to, maybe it just responded slowly, okay? So he's moving through the world with what I call his me eyes on, okay? We all do this. You think you're seeing everything that's going on, but really you have a whole set of biases built around who you think you are, and you move through the world with your me eyes on, and you look for information or stories or, products that connect with you, okay? So you are walking through the world looking with your me eyes on, and as someone said in the introduction this morning, it's perfectly believable that what you're not looking for is age class statistics on trees, right? That's not the first thing that those me eyes are going to pick out for this guy. And the next thing is, you're looking for community, you're looking to belong. What do we do to human beings if we want to punish them? We put them outside the tribe, right? We put them in social isolation, we isolate them. Right? So what we know is we're the most social species on the planet. And when we're telling stories and trying to reach tribes of people, it's really important to understand, as you've heard today, all the values. What is it that tribe values? How do we talk to them in a way that will reach them? So if we're going to talk about the forest sector, if we're going to talk about foresters, if we're going to talk about what you do, we have to find an entry point that will reach these tribes that we want to reach. Okay, and we'll talk more about specifically who we're trying to reach as we go. Now here's a strange phenomenon. The first strange phenomenon is my clicker is going in the trash at the end of this presentation. Okay, can you advance the slide for me? Anybody notice that this slide was already in a presentation this morning? I have used this slide for 20 years, I think, and no one's ever used it as well, so that was very bizarre, okay? But that's just a coincidence, I promise, okay? But what we're going to do when we've used our me eyes and we've talked, I've seen whether you're connecting with me in my tribe, I'm going to start creating a story, right? And who's the most important person that I'm going to tell that story to, right? You know from what Andy told you, we use stories to collect information and organize information and understand the world we're moving through, right? But who do you think is the most important audience for that story? Whoever you're talking to at the time, okay? Your tribe, yeah. Yourself, okay? So if I had to, I often give presentations on branding, believe it or not. Not on forest-related branding, but just branding in general. And I always say to people, the single most important thing you can take away from a presentation on branding is that we use stories and we use brands and associations to tell stories to ourselves, right? That's the primary audience. A personality, all your personality is the stories that you tell yourself about who you are. And if you don't believe me, ask your spouse or partner, what are the 3 stories that you wish you never had to hear ever again, right? And you have them. They're the stories that define who you are, that you share to tell people who you are in the world. Advancing again. Okay, now we're going to be in trouble. Is that, the clicker's pointed in, right? So maybe it's a question of distance. It usually works from much further away. There's something interfering with it. Okay, so we use stories, we use these associations in the world to do 3 or 4 things that are really, really important to us as human beings. These are primary needs of a human being. Am I seen? Do you see me? Right? How many people have a teenage child right now? Okay? Very, very important for them to establish right now, or work out what is my identity. So they're pretty vocal on who am I. We have to belong. We don't want to be isolated. We must belong to a tribe. We need to make meaning in the world. We need to understand the world we live in, especially in a world that is changing as fast as this one is. We're constantly seeking ways to make meaning. And the primary tool, I don't know if this is the right way to say it, and you can debate it, but I would say the primary tool that we have to make meaning in the world is to create stories or hear stories or share stories. That's how we do it. Okay? When I say once upon a time, everyone in the room just kind of relaxes and gets ready. Okay? Something good's coming, and it's going to give me useful meaning and information. And then we have a strong sense of purpose. We want to have a strong sense of purpose. And as a previous speaker just pointed out, when you look at millennials, they have a very strong sense of purpose and an extremely acute need to feel like they're contributing to solving society's challenges, right? If you actually, most of us didn't grow up in a world where every day people were making statements about climate change that, you know, the sky really might be falling on us. Most of us didn't grow up in that context. Millennials are growing up in a context where they feel that need so acutely that when you ask them what is it they want to do as a job, they say, I want to help solve the environmental crisis. I want to help solve some of the biggest challenges we have today. So our challenge as a sector, as a community that works in forests, is to help them do those things. Give them a sense of identity, give them a sense of belonging, help them make meaning in the world, help them understand what we do, and help them understand why what we do is such a powerful potential force in terms of creating solutions, helping solve the crises that they see. So a few years ago, it started in about 2016, and there are people in the room who were there right at the beginning of this, a group of leaders in the sector came together and said, how do we do a better job of telling our story? It was really that simple a question. And what was formed then was called the North American Forest Partnership. Okay, so how many people have heard of Forest Proud again? Raise your hands if you've heard of Forest Proud. How many people have heard of the North American Forest Partnership? Right, about a quarter of the people that raised their hands for Forest Proud, which was because we decided we actually didn't need another acronym in the forest sector. Okay, when I took this on and we looked at the naming of it, it's a great partnership, but we talk about the partnership and then the platform, and the platform itself is Forest Proud. Right now it involves about 100 different organizations, and we were talking as well in the presentations this morning about, you know, building trust. How do you build trust? Who is trusted? How do we build more trust in the sector? Well, if you want to create a credible voice on behalf of the sector, it's got to be diverse, right? So Forest Proud, NAFP, the North American Forest Partnership, is the most diverse coalition of interests in the forest sector. We have everybody from Weyerhaeuser to NAFO to you guys to the universities to people who are just interested in forests. We have Weyerhaeuser, we have 4 or 5 of the biggest paper companies in the country. It's a super diverse group of interests. Okay, so if you want to picture an image of herding cats for a second and think about what I do on a daily basis, we're trying to bring together a very, very diverse coalition of players so that when we show up and tell our story, it's much more credible. Right? Because you've got the Nature Conservancy as part of this coalition sitting beside Weyerhaeuser or whoever, we have a much better chance of creating a credible voice on behalf of the sector. So this is basically what we're up to. It's a diverse, credible community delivering a consistent pipeline of original, compelling content, building trust and support for and pride in the forest sector. And again, what you're going to see is a bunch of words you've already heard said this morning, okay? This is about being credible and authentic. It's about building trust. And it's about creating compelling content. When you talk to millennials through social media, which is the primary distribution channel that we're going to reach them through, your content has to be approximately or at the same grade as the best content they're seeing. Right? Unfortunately, just because you're a non-profit or just because you work in the forest sector, you don't get a special card that says, we're going to put content on there. It's not going to be very good, but what we do is really important, so we want you guys to watch it. Right? That's not how it works. It's a super competitive place to try and reach people, so the content has to be up to standard. This clicker is going in the trash before the presentation is over. Okay. Oh, you're clicking too? Oh, I thought I saw your hands move. Okay. So this is my favorite picture when I think about what it is we're trying to do at Forest Proud, because look at how this woman is walking through a CLT office, and she's just reaching out and absent-mindedly stroking the wall as she walks to her desk, right? So she's walking through a mass timber office across a wooden floor to go and sit in a wooden chair, grab a wooden pencil and a piece of paper made from wood, and write a letter about clear cutting to the governor of Oregon, right? This is the amazing disconnect that everyone in this room understands, right? So she's going to write that letter and then put it in a paper envelope. I mean, you just keep going. Everything that she does, there's no connection in her mind between the job that you guys do and why there are still forests and how forests are managed. So our job is to bridge that gap and buy a new clicker. Okay, that's my job. So what is it that we're trying to do with Forest Proud? And what we did is a lot of research back in the day, and many of you have seen this kind of research, about how audiences think about the forest sector. And I would summarize what we're trying to do as this. And actually the first point has, for me, I've been doing this for 2.5 years. I worked with a couple of other folks in the sector before that. But if I had to say the single most important thing about this sector is, instead of defending ourselves the whole time, we need to start defining who we are.
And changing.
You switched. That is very sensible. Thank you. Okay. Let's see if it worked. Yes. Okay. Defending to defining. I'm taking this one home. We need to move from this splintered place where there's 50 different voices in the sector, all sort of vying for a position on what it is the story they need to tell, but no one providing the overall story, right? So our job is to provide the aligned story of this is who the sector is. We need to get a little bit away, and I'm going to count the number of checked shirts or plaid shirts in the room because there's quite a few today, okay? But we need to get beyond just being seen as kind of Paul Bunyan or that stereotype, and be seen as responsible, innovative stewards. And you'll see us talk about innovation as we go, but I think this is one of the most innovative sectors out there. It's not the reputation you have, it's certainly the reputation we should be building. And we need to get beyond the idea that cutting trees is bad. And we put plenty of trees being cut in our content. You'll probably see some of that as we go. And start talking about diverse forests with different outcomes. Right? What you know that when you ask people about a forest, they have 2 forests in their head. Usually it's 2 or 3. Okay, I'm going to name the 3 forests, not you guys. Okay, if I ask you how many forests are in your head, you're going to start going through that Rolodex that I can't keep up with, that Ray, who works for me, can. Okay, but they have 3 forests in their head. One has Bambi and unicorns kind of running through it. You know, it's never been touched by human hands. Okay, one is a clear cut, and one is a fresh clear cut. And one is, if we're lucky, a forest that they go to or work in or play in or whatever it might be, right? Those are the 3 forests. And I think one of the biggest issues people have about cutting trees down is not necessarily that they don't know that they're replanted or that that's commonly the case. It's just that they don't understand that we have a portfolio of forests that we're managing for a host of different outcomes. And as a society, we make decisions about which outcomes and how to manage those forests. And if they understood that portfolio, we'd at least have a chance to start talking about, hey, if you want to write that letter and sit in that chair, we do actually have to cut some trees down. You can't just sit in the tree and do those things, okay? And we've got to get away from the idea that in North America, deforestation is occurring. What percentage of Americans do you think believe deforestation is a big problem in America? In North America, not worldwide. If you had to guess, what percentage of Americans do you think believe deforestation is a huge problem in the States? 35, do you say?
65.
65. When we did it, and many people have asked this question, it's about 80% still. Right? So 80% of Americans still believe deforestation is a huge problem. Okay, clicker issues. So we brought this coalition together. And then we had to decide what is the story that we can tell as a coalition. Super diverse coalition. So imagine getting 100 different partners all to come to the same place on what is the story that we need to tell. Now, this doesn't pass Andy's story test, but this is the narrative that you're going to see in all the content that we use. The first thing is forests touch every part of your life, so let's start to connect people to that. Forests can solve big societal challenges. And I'm going to talk about this a lot, but this to me is the most critical message that we haven't yet got out there. The third is that solutions are rooted in how we manage forests. And the fourth is that that requires a lot of people to be trusted to do their part. That's you, okay? We need people to trust you in your role. And that our job overall as a sector is to make sure that we make choices that keep forests as forests. Now, can everyone understand that this is kind of a core narrative that we can now take forward into everything that we do at Forest Proud? Okay? With that in mind, I just want to show you the first of a couple of videos. And this is the easiest way to explain who Forest Proud is and how it works. Every generation has a big question they have to answer. And I think fundamentally, our generation has to answer the question, what is our carbon future going to look like?
I grew up in the mountains with big, tall trees, and now I live in the suburbs that have small neighborhood parks.
Trees and forests are in everybody's lives. Whether you have a tree in your front yard along the street or 40 acres in your backyard, it all comes together.
They connect us to our past, and they are the solution for a changing environment in the future.
Having a bunch of people together, living in one area, would not be possible if it weren't for forests.
As more and more people migrate to cities, it's increasingly important that they understand that building with natural materials is part of the most sustainable environment.
Not everybody in every city can live as closely to a forest, so we have to bring forests to the cities.
When I think about reimagining cities, I think about having the opportunity to infuse nature into everybody's everyday life.
Forests can provide us with a pathway to a much more carbon-friendly future.
There's often this misconception that cutting down a tree is always bad.
When you use a tree or when you use a wood product, there's another tree being planted and another tree growing that will be in use for generations.
Well-managed forests and the utilization of the products that come from those well-managed forests is actually a pretty critical solution to climate change and climate mitigation strategies in the long run.
Hashtag Forest Proud means whatever it means to you. And so for those of us that are in the profession that deal more with the industrial side, it means renewable, sustainable products that society needs and wants. For those in the conservation community, it means protecting those forests for all their benefits from water, wildlife, recreation, and then everything in between.
I want to challenge people to think about the connection of their lives and the things they appreciate in their lives and the stake they've got in creating growing, healthy, resilient forests across our landscape.
It's in our hands and it's in our children's hands. And if we treat forests well, we know they'll treat us well.
I am forest proud because I believe very strongly in the power of forests to make our lives better and make the world a better place for humans and society for generations to come.
Forest Proud is an opportunity for us to knit together all the disparate groups that really have a common denominator. I think we're on the cusp of something great, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
Okay, back on. But what it is basically an advertisement for the partnership and the platform to you and to the sector to say, we can show up in this powerful way, right? And what you're hearing in there is us start to hint at what are the solutions that we're going to provide. And in fact, again, sort of take away one thing about how I think we need to communicate it as a sector, is that we need to show people that we are about bringing solutions, not problems. Okay, so if you think about millennials leaving college or leaving high school, and they're thinking, how can I do a job that is going to help save the environment? How many of you think, raise your hands and be honest about this, how many you think right now of those graduates from college and high school associate the forest sector with solving climate change or carbon issues? Right? Yeah, a couple of hands go up. I want all of them to be thinking, the forest sector is probably the place where I could do the most with my life to help address that challenge. So that's the job before us. We have 3 key audiences. The first is the existing workforce. So we have 100 members. If you add all the social media accounts of our members together, it's about 10.5 million people that we could be reaching, that we're not reaching right now, right? So how do we use them to reach those folks? Then we have the potential workforce, and that's how do we attract new talent and diversity and get those folks to come and work in the sector. And then we're trying to reach policymakers so that they associate the sector with solutions at scale. So that's the audience that we have, or that we're going after. And we're using 3 key themes to do that. The first is reimagining cities. So we're not just talking about CLT and mass timber, but we're talking at the scale of how can the forest sector actually help reimagine future cities. Rethinking our carbon future. So what is the role of the forest sector in addressing the carbon issues that we have? And then reconnecting people and forests as we go. So, another piece of content. Now I'm going to show you, when you've heard about stories and storytelling, and Andy gave you kind of here are the core laws of telling a good story, you can use that set of frames to assess this video and see what you think about how this would reach our audience.
On fire, weather conditions, and forecasts. Know what your fire is doing at all times. Makes all actions on current and expected behavior of the fire. Identify escape routes and safe close lookouts when there is possible danger. Keep calm. Safety zones and escape routes not firefight. Fire not scouted and sized up. In country not safety zone and escape. On instructions and strategy not tactics. Without safety. On a hillside where rolling you know what your fire is doing at all times. I chose smoke jumping. It was kind of a long road for me. It sounded like a huge challenge. The initial training to be a smoke jumper is very difficult.
Can't believe these warning signs.
It wasn't really a decision that I came to like one day. I was like, I want to be a smoke jumper. It just kind of evolved over the years of being exposed to the fire community.
Can't explain.
We live with wildfire. It's always part of our lives. I remember when I was a little girl and there was a fire a couple of miles from our house, and so my dad and I hiked out onto a high point on a rock, and it was the first time I'd really seen fire, and since then it was just part of my reality. The feeling when the siren goes off, everyone's heart rate speeds up. You run and put your gear on, and you load up on the plane with as many people as can fit on the plane. Get as much information as you can before you jump. You don't know what the conditions are going to be like, and so you're excited, but there's a fair amount of nerves. And you jump. Everything you do is accomplished as a team. You're not an individual fighting a fire. You're there as a group, and we're going to make it work no matter what the odds are against us. I think it's important for the public to understand that fire is part of the ecosystem that we live in. Always been part of it. It's natural. It's not good, and it's not necessarily bad. People initially are always very disturbed and upset when they see a wildfire because it is very destructive, but at the same time it's also cleansing and healing because it's part of the natural process of the forest, and it will burn, but it's always going to regrow. To me, being a smoke jumper is just being someone who gets the job done.
Okay, any response to that piece? Let's just hear how you react to that. And then we'll tell you what we're trying to do with it briefly.
What happens when she hits the ground?
We have 2 minutes, so we have to not go any further. That's one of the things I want to get across with, in terms of using video on social media is, Unfortunately, you have to go to a pretty short format if you want people to use it. What's amazing is then we can track exactly how people watch it, when they stop watching it, what kind of time frames can we work with. But we used Naomi. As soon as we saw Naomi, we're like, this is someone you can put on video that's going to tell a great story in 2 minutes, right? You get a very strong sense of who she is. And in the same way that the military might use the Navy SEALs to try and get everybody to come into all the jobs in the military, we're basically using the Navy SEALs of firefighting to bring people in to come and work in the sector because she's got such a good story to tell. You'll also see us show up in your social media with just very simple facts and numbers. And I know we've talked about how those aren't the most important thing to use, but we can sort of feed those in appropriately alongside the stories and the videos, and then people can go and learn more about a specific issue. So this is another person I keep in mind all the time. How do I get this person who spends their leisure time, and a lot of their time at work, and probably when they're not working, thinking about being in a forest, to be advocates for us, to share information, to use their social networks to reach a lot more people. Now you're probably wondering, okay, how is it going? We've been going for just over a year in terms of actually having the platform fully operational and putting numbers out there. But when we were asked, are we reaching millennials? This was fun for me because I knew that we were in this format, but you guys don't necessarily know how much we are doing that. On average, we're now reaching about 1 million people a month on their social networks. Okay, so 1 million. Sometimes we've had a couple of 3 million people a month actually having Forest Proud show up in their networks, and we often get as many as 700,000 people viewing these videos now on a monthly basis. Probably the most important number up here is how many of them are engaging with those videos, sharing them, liking them, actually moving our content through social media. And if you look at this month, this is May of this year, we had close to 25,000 people, 24,000 people actually engage with that content and share it. So we're producing the videos with the support of you and our membership, and then we can put them out on social media and promote them. And we're starting to reach, on average, as we say, about 1 million people a month. And we're starting to gain, in terms of people joining the tribe, close to 1,000 people a month. Now, a lot of these numbers, it's always hard to look at social media numbers and understand what's going on. But in terms of meeting our goals, we're pretty sure we're going to meet our goals for this year and go past on a number of them. But I think what's most important to realize is, 2 years ago, the North American Forest Partnership sat down and set goals. And the goals were things like, can we get 1,000 Facebook members this year, right? Now we're adding 1,000 people a month to that tribe. So it's starting to have that curve where we're crossing a threshold and really growing the overall impact of it. Last thing just to show you is a Forest Proud billboard that one of our members put up near one of their mills. So we're always looking for innovative ways to use the Forest Proud platform. If you look at Ray over there, which will cause Ray great anguish, she's wearing a Forest Proud t-shirt. I think, did everybody get a Forest Proud t-shirt in their bag? Okay, so that's another way that you can support us, is put that t-shirt on. But what we really need you to do is to join, follow, engage with Forest Proud. Every single one of you, if you just use the Forest Proud hashtag, you're helping us. If you look at Forest Proud on whatever social media you're in, and if you're not, I know how hard it is to get people to join social media who aren't using it, but if you do start using social media, make sure that you're sharing, engaging with, moving forward Forest Proud as we go. We started by asking, has everybody heard of Forest Proud? The hands went up, a lot of hands went up for that. Had you heard of the North American Forest Partnership? 3 or 4 times this sector has tried to do this. This is hard to do, okay? It's hard to bring everybody together, to create a credible voice, to build this foundation of support, but we have done that. We are going to need the support of the entire sector to keep it going. The problem consistently with this sector is we'll sort of invest in the next new idea and then gradually it trickles away and that one's gone too. If we're getting 1 million people a month to look at this content, we know we can build and build and build on that and really tell a very different story about who we are. We know that everybody in this room is part of the solution on climate change. We know that everybody in this room and everything that you do helps us reimagine the future of cities. We just need to get that story out there and do a better job of telling it.